Welcome to Dreamora Night, everyone, the place where we come together to listen, to unwind, and to drift gently into that sweet, peaceful sleep we all crave. I'm Daniel, your host tonight, and oh, how grateful I am that you've chosen to spend this quiet evening with us. Thank you so much for being here. Hey there, good evening everyone, and welcome back. Can you believe it? Tonight, we're embarking on an incredible journey to Japan, a breathtaking land where towering mountains, ancient forests, and vast seas are absolutely brimming with spirits, gods, and timeless stories that have profoundly shaped its culture for thousands upon thousands of years. Isn't that just magical? This, my friends, is the complete, awe-inspiring story of Japanese mythology and folklore. Have you ever wondered, where exactly did the gods come from? How on earth was the world created? And how did these epic myths of raging storms, the radiant sun, and mysterious shadows weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life? Oh, the questions are endless. We'll dive right in with the miraculous creation of the islands, the divine birth of the gods, Izanagi and Izanami, and the heart-stirring tale of the sun goddess, Amaterasu. Doesn't that sound thrilling? Then we'll meander through enchanting stories of clever trickster foxes, eerie haunting spirits, and brave heroes who confronted terrifying monsters with such incredible courage and elegant grace. Wow, just imagining it gives me chills. These are tales that beautifully blend sheer beauty with profound mystery, real history with boundless imagination, stories that still resonate so deeply today, echoing through sacred shrines, vibrant festivals, and those peaceful, quiet corners of Japan. Don't you feel the pull of that ancient wonder? As always, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Where in the world are you tuning in from right now, and what time is it there for you? If these stories touch your heart like they do mine, please take just a second to comment below and hit that subscribe button. It's the simplest way to show your support for this channel, and honestly, it means the world to me. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. You're amazing. Now, are you ready? Let us begin this extraordinary adventure. Picture this. In the profound hush before time itself even existed, there was nothing but a slow-breathing darkness. It wasn't empty or full, not cold or warm, just this incredible stillness, pregnant with the promise of every single motion that was yet to come. Can you feel the anticipation building? That quiet wasn't a mere void, like the hollow inside a cave, no. It was more like a gentle cradle of the very first memory, a sacred space where the delicate seeds of light and substance floated lazily, like pollen in air that hadn't yet discovered how to stir and swirl. Out of that deeply pregnant silence, oh, how powerful it must have been. The subtle forces began to separate from the dense ones. Whatever was light and ethereal rose gracefully into heights that hadn't even been named yet, while the heavy elements sank slowly toward a foundation that would one day echo with the tread of feet. And between them, a vast, misted expanse lingered, waiting patiently, a boundless field of unworked, infinite possibility. Isn't that breathtaking? From those rising lights emerged a realm of utter purity. It was known as the high plane of heaven, a place so exquisitely refined that no shadow dared cling to its edges. Pure perfection. From the settling heaviness came a land that would later be called the Central Reed Plain. So raw, wet and restless, like a vast marsh dreaming vividly of transforming into a thriving country. How poetic is that? Before oceans stretched endlessly, before majestic mountains discovered their strong spines, before trees mastered the patient art of growing rings year after year, there were only these subtle tendencies, the very first leanings of the world itself. And it's in those precarious, tilting places, my friends, that gods are truly born. Wow, just think about it. The earliest gods emerged as pure thoughts, suddenly given glorious form by their own crystal clarity. They didn't descend from anywhere or anyone. They simply stood up from the very fabric of existence and opened their eyes wide to the wonder around them. They were creators without physical hands, brilliant minds that established universal laws long before there were starry courts to enforce them. Incredible, right? Among these divine presences were beings whose names evoke the purest sound of beginnings names that linger on the tongue like a whisper of dawn. There was the Lord of the august center of heaven, a serene ruler embodying perfect stillness. And there were those divine generators, whose very names feel like the gentle rhythm of breath drawn in and softly let out. So evocative. Not a single one of them required marriage or birth to exist. They were utterly of themselves, and by themselves, self-sufficient wonders. And when their sacred work in that initial dazzling brightness was complete, they receded gracefully, like a gentle tide pulling back to reveal a shore gleaming with fresh promise. More deities arose in quiet, successive batches, each one a vital strand in a strong rope that would eventually bind heaven firmly to earth. But these weren't the ones destined to gift the world its beautiful islands or its ever-changing weather, no. They formed the essential foundation, the sacred ground upon which such monumental acts could even become possible. How foundational, how profound. As the generations of these early gods gracefully unfolded over eons, the immense creative task passed down an invisible, divine chain until it finally reached a destined pair, chosen for the heavy, awe-inspiring labor of true shaping. Their names carry the weight and strength of ancient ceremony. He who invites, and she who invites. Izanagi and Izanami. Don't those names just resonate with power? They weren't a couple in the familiar mortal sense, bound by the long weave of shared daily lives. No. They were a perfectly matched pair, hand-selected by a wise council of deities who deeply understood that the world below had solidified into a stunning yet incomplete form. A beautiful incompletion, crying out for completion. The high plane desperately needed bold builders armed with endless patience and daring vision, while the central reed plane yearned for loving parents to nurture it into fullness. Oh, the divine wisdom in that choice. There's this extraordinary bridge, not made of beams or ropes, mind you, an ethereal span that mysteriously hangs between the tangible world we can touch and taste, and the imaginative realm we dream of when we close our eyes. The gods named it the floating bridge of heaven. Doesn't that evoke pure wonder? Upon this wondrous, unanchored path, the inviting pair stood tall, their flowing robes fluttering softly in a wind that hadn't yet learned the art of direction. Into Izanagi's strong hands, the gods placed a spear that doubled as a profound symbol. A magnificent shaft adorned with jewels that didn't merely glitter, but glowed with inner light, as if alive. It was the heavenly jeweled spear. No ordinary weapon or tool, oh no. Its sharp point instinctively knew how to pierce straight to the heart of chaos itself. Astonishing. The the world far below them undulated like the skin of a vast creature lost in deep dreams. It was sea, yet not quite sea, a vast softness concealing the waiting bones of solid land beneath. The two divine creators leaned forward eagerly, much like a compassionate midwife leans in toward the faint sound of a newborn's first cry, full of hope and tenderness. Together, in perfect harmony, they lowered the spear and delicately dipped its gleaming point into the swirling churn below. They didn't stab or thrust violently. No! They stirred ever so gently at first, then with a soothing rhythm that mirrors knitting threads into warm cloth. And then, miracle of miracles, the spear lifted heavy with luminous, shining drops that fell back in slow, perfect pearls. Can you visualize those glistening trails, where each precious drop touched the surface of the unmade sea? A miraculous skin formed and thickened rapidly. It gathered and coalesced, becoming first a small hummock, then a substantial mass, and finally a full island. The very first solid ground beneath the heavens. They named it Onogoro, meaning self-coagulated, a place that willed itself into existence, choosing to become real. How profoundly poetic. And there are beginnings nested within beginnings, aren't there? This brand new land cried out for a true center, so the pair of creators stepped down courageously from the free, floating bridge, onto the still damp, fresh soil feel, that earthy moisture underfoot. At the very heart of Onogoro, they erected a pillar so elegantly graceful and impossibly tall that it resembled a slender reed reaching eternally upward toward the infinite sky. Around this central pillar, which served as both the axis of the entire world and humanity's first true architecture, Izanagi and Izanami performed a sacred rite. They circled it slowly in opposite directions, as if weaving an invisible knot in the very air itself. Such ritual beauty. As they passed one another, they exchanged warm greetings, and in that sacred instant, the very first words ever spoken rang out upon Earth's attentive ear. Imagine the echo of those primordial voices. Yet their first attempt at divine union yielded a child that wasn't quite right, a heartbreaking, poor creature, lacking the strong bones to even stand upright. The island embodied within that flawed first child proved unfit for habitation and was gently set adrift upon the endless waters. Such sorrow in that moment. With heavy hearts, they brought their deep sorrow before the higher gods who had originally commissioned them. And in that compassionate counsel, the mistake was gently understood and explained. Form demands proper etiquette, doesn't it? Words must be uttered in the precise right order. If one speaks prematurely, out of turn, harmony itself is bruised and wounded. Oh, the delicate balance. Undeterred, they returned to the pillar, circled once more with renewed focus, spoke in the correct harmonious turn, and through that exact, precise ceremony, discovered the key that unlocks every stubbornly locked gate. Yes. When they finally came together after this corrected rite perfectly aligned, the responsive land erupted in joy. The Great 8 Islands were born, emerging not in a sudden explosion like sparks from struck stone, but gradually, as a loving family arrives, one after another, each with its unique, beautiful face. Awaji All rose first, a long and gentle form that stretched languidly between lands not yet emerged. Shikoku followed, multifaceted and serenely calm. Then came Oki and Kyushu, Iki, Tsushima, and Sado, and finally, majestic, Honshu, the great sturdy backbone of the entire archipelago, rolling its powerful shoulders up from the depths of the sea. What a spectacular birth. The future people who would one day roam these shores were still mere dreams formed of clay, but their winding roads were already being sketched into existence. Rivers eagerly learned their curving beds. Winds remembered and honoured ancient roots. Coastlines drew elegant, curving parentheses around lives yet to unfold such foresight. But Izanagi and Izanami didn't pause at merely creating islands no way. They pressed on, passionately filling the world with rich textures and vibrant life. They brought forth gods destined to dwell in tides and currents, to rule over misty fog and pouring rain, to claim thrones atop towering mountains and cozy nests in lush valleys. There were wondrous deities of marshy wetlands and delicate ferns, of protective tree bark and life-giving sap climbing through veins. They birthed gods of bast fibre and intricate weaving, of golden rice fields and the sturdy dikes that tame and protect them. They breathed life into guardians of cozy roofs and warm hearths, of welcoming thresholds and winding roads. Every detail mattered. The ever-growing catalogue of spirits became long, diverse, and utterly beautiful. It felt as if the divine pair were master artists, painting with vibrant, living colours, each bold stroke manifesting a unique god complete with its own sacred tasks and captivating stories. How endlessly creative. How inspiring. Oh, my friends, can you feel the radiant joy that flooded their palace on Onagoro? This island wasn't a solitary place anymore. No, it had proudly become the first of many, the shining heart of a world in bloom. There was such deep, overflowing joy and fierce purpose in that divine home. Creation is the most exhilarating high imaginable, leaving even gods glowing with triumph, yet utterly spent from the sheer wonder of it all. Isn't that incredibly moving? Between their tremendous labours, Izanagi and Izanami rested, planning excitedly for the next children of Earth. They salted the vast seas and gave them those captivating tides. Rivers learned to braid elegantly through plains. The first forests raised their lush canopies, and graceful cranes rehearsed dances that would enchant future eyes. How poetic and alive everything felt. Night hadn't yet donned its full velvet weight, imagine that gentle dusk. Day hadn't claimed its blazing crown either. Those glories waited patiently for their moment. But then, oh, the sorrow begins. Izanami felt a fierce heat rising within her for another birth. This one was different, dangerously so. Some gifts come wrapped in peril, demanding a heartbreaking cost. Why must beauty and pain intertwine like this? She laboured intensely, and the world held its breath. In the instant the child emerged, a blaze tore through her, as if the sun burst forth through a mortal gate. How devastating. The child was fire incarnate Kagutsuchi. Flame is both comforting hearth and destructive ash, banquet and plague. That first breath scorched the mother who bore him. Izanami lay pale, still, robes shriveled, lips cracked from the heat she delivered. The joyful palace fell deathly silent. Can you feel the chill? Izanagi gathered the crackling child, trembling with torn love and fury. Grief can make a god act mortal. In raging passion, half justice, half helpless sorrow, he drew his blade and struck. The fiery boy died by his father's hand. The tragedy! Yet from the spilled blood sprang new powers, mountains, rivers, gods of molten strength. Pieces of the body birthed spirits for mines, ploughs, swords. Sorrow isn't barren. The world multiplies even in mourning, a bittersweet mercy. Izanagi knelt beside his wife. She was slipping away on a soft current he couldn't follow. Attendants arranged her hair, covered her as if garments could deny the black bird of death perched overhead. He whispered fearfully, "The sea needs you. Mountains call for you." He confessed his terrible act, vowing to pull down stars to keep her. But she heard a distant call. Yomi wasn't yet punitive, just a realm of rest, a shadowed mirror. Izanami drifted there like walking a dusky beach. The water wasn't wet. The light was perpetual afterglow. She looked back once, eyes already filmed by that land's law. No hand, not even a god's can, hold that border. Silence crushed Onogoro's pillars. Wind gods muted songs, river gods hid music under stones. Izanagi felt life's folding emptiness. Wise grief knows the world continues. Rice seeks light, sand forgets footprints. But he wasn't wise. He was a husband resolved to defy the gate. The high plane chose him for resolve. Now he'd stake it against death's oldest barrier. He'd descend and bring her back. The thought burned without harming, lighting his path along sea's edges, through fern-scented ravines, into sighing caverns, until life's hum faded and Yomi's trembled ahead, like a corridor of sealed doors. Yomi's entrance wasn't a door but its absence, a passage unfinished. He felt sunless winds chill and entered. Light faded from eyelid glow to nothing. He walked by memory of her hand. He called her name like a bell in snow. Distant answers, water or sorrow. He called again. Something turned. She was there, not radiant as before, but moving in dusk. His heart leaped like a startled fish. He reached. She held back gently. Her soft words lacked sunlit ring. She'd eaten Yomi's food-binding oath. She wanted return, but law was clear. She'd plead with lords. He mustn't look until permitted. Promise, she begged. He promised, God yet husband in doubt. Promises in dimness demand fierce patience. He waited where time stands like a wall. No measure recalls how long. Silence thickened unbearably. Fear broke his vow. He kindled hidden torches' spark. Light revealed horror. His wife crowned by the devouring land. Her flesh changed. Thunder creatures in hair like clenched fists. Gnawing secrets in mouth. Vine-like shadows on skin. The sight broke him beyond blades. He cried out. Sound woke the house. Wardens stirred. She felt betrayal like a rib-pressed blade. Upper chases end at fences. Below, at stone. Izanagi fled. Yomi's guardians pursued. Mouths frothing frogs. Hands clutching hunger's tools. Little flame shook in pursuit's wind. He reached the tightening passage, heaved a boulder stone and law, and blocked it. Guardians pounded, ritually. He panted, ash-fingered God. She stood calmly angry beyond the rock. Her iron-bending voice accused shame and vowed. For betrayal, she'd claim 1,000 souls daily. Oh, my dear listeners, can you even imagine the fire in Izanagi's eyes at that moment? He pressed his palm hard against the cold, massive stone, feeling its unyielding weight, and answered her chilling vow with a rage that burned just as brightly as his iron resolve. Then I will cause my child Thebe 1,500 births each day. He roared. Yes, life would triumph, outnumbering death and giving the living that precious, slender advantage we all hold on to so desperately. Isn't that the ultimate act of defiance against despair? In the electric space between those two thunderous sentences, her promise of 1,000 deaths, his vow of 1,500 births. The delicate balance of the entire world was forged, hammered into a sharp, double-edged blade. that still cuts through every single one of us today. How profound, how inescapable that cosmic bargain feels. He left the boulder exactly where it stood, an eternal seal, and began the long, exhausting climb back through the dark veins of the earth, every step heavier than the last. When he finally emerged into the glorious light of the upper world, the warm sun draped itself gently across his weary shoulders like a soft, comforting shawl, offering solace. But he didn't raise his face to it, did he? The sorrow was too raw, too overwhelming. He had carried something inescapable up from those depths. The haunting smell of endings, the fine dust from forgotten places where even names dissolve into silence. He felt profoundly unclean. And though a god's stain isn't quite the same as a mortal's less visible, perhaps more spiritual stain is still stain, clinging stubbornly to the soul. Can you feel the weight of that lingering impurity on a divine creator? With quiet determination, he walked to a sparkling, clear river one that gracefully knew how to erase the fleeting footprints of birds along its banks. At its refreshing edge, he slowly removed the garments that had brushed against those grim caverns. And wonder of wonders, as he set each piece aside, spirits rose up from the fabric like morning mist. The band that had bound his hair unfurled gently, and a brand new deity stepped gracefully from its smooth curve. His worn sandals slipped off, and tiny gods eagerly climbed out from the pressed straw new life springing from the ordinary. In the crisp, high air, another divine power stirred and shook itself awake so vibrantly that the simple act of disrobing felt like scattering a handful of fertile seeds across richly tilled soil, ready to burst into abundance. How beautifully symbolic, how full of hope. He stepped boldly into the flowing river, and the cool water closed around his calves with the tender sigh of a long-lost friend, joyfully returning pure welcome. He cupped the crystal water in his hands and moistened his dry lips, savouring a taste that was the glorious opposite of grim yomi. It wasn't thick or heavy, no. It wasn't ancient or stale. It was fresh, vibrant, the very first brightness poured into a simple bowl, reviving his spirit. Doesn't that cleansing feel like a miracle? He washed his left eye with care, and out of that sacred rinsing rose a resplendent goddess, who seemed to carry pure, glowing daylight beneath her luminous skin. Amaterasu, radiant and life-affirming. He washed his right eye and flung the water skyward, and from that purifying act blazed a god whose serene silver calm embodied the patient march of months Tsukuyomi, mysterious and steady. At last, he blew forcefully to expel the final traces of underworld air from his nose. And from that powerful exhalation emerged a god who strode with storm forever at his heels, and wild sea wind whipping through his untamed hair. Susanoo, fierce and unstoppable, three noble, magnificent children now stood proudly upon the riverbank as if they had always been waiting, patiently destined to be summoned by their true, eternal names. The sun itself smiled warmly in the face of the first pure joy. The moon bowed with elegant grace in the poise of the second serene reverence. The third gazed toward the distant horizon and beheld massive waves rising like a herd of powerful, pale-backed beasts, raw, primal energy. That sacred, transformative moment at the river. Oh, it's one of the greatest turning points, the true hinges of the entire world. With it, the vast upper air finally found its rightful ruler's order restored in the heavens. The goddess of the sun ascended gloriously to her throne in the high plain. Wherever her loving gaze touched, green things everywhere remembered that growth is an irresistible, divine command life surging triumphantly. The god of the moon mastered the cool secrets of nocturnal travel and precisely marked the rhythmic breaths of the endless sea. The Stormbringer accepted the heavy charge of restless waters and those fierce winds that shape and bruise coasts alike. Their father stood humbly on the smooth stones and felt the very last traces of Yomi's filth fall away from him like dry autumn leaves, finally purified. He had lost his beloved wife, irreplaceable heartbreak. Yet from that crushing loss, he had forged cosmic balance and birthed extraordinary children redemption born of pain. The world, is a relentless marketplace that demands constant exchanges. We hate the unfair trades, don't we? Yet we live by them, growing stronger through the sorrow. From that pivotal day forward, the creation of the world entered a magnificent new order harmony reborn. Sun and moon learned their eternal, graceful circuits across the sky. The islands, which had once absorbed the deep sadness of their grieving first mother, now drank deeply of the nourishing milk of regular, predictable seasons, renewal everywhere. Elegant cranes rehearsed their epic winter migrations with perfect precision. Rice fields mastered the ancient rhythm of flood and careful drain. The gods of hill and flowing river gratefully added a fresh, hopeful line to their daily prayers, acknowledging the shift. For they could all sense in those three powerful new presences the thrilling dawn of a true celestial court, majestic and intricate. A court means so much more than golden thrones, doesn't it? It means passionate wars and heartfelt reconciliations, painful exiles and joyful returns contests, ending in triumphant laughter or rivers of blood. The full drama of immortality. Onogoro watched in silence, its central pillar still rising proudly toward the vast, untouched blue. Izanagi turned away from the shimmering waterside and began to walk onward, carrying his quiet burden. Somewhere beneath that very same endless sky, on the forbidden wrong side of that massive stone, his first, irreplaceable beloved had become a somber queen in a realm mortals whisper about with many fearful names. Yomi, the land beyond. He did not call out to her again. Wisdom born of pain. A promise broken. Once is not a reliable rope to keep tugging hard lesson learned. Instead, he looked down tenderly at the fresh tracks his children had left where they first stood on the bank, and a deep, peaceful understanding settled over him. The grand story he had courageously begun would now belong to them. Legacy past. The light would plunge into dark caves and emerge victorious once more. The storm would stumble with mistakes, yet work miracles too. The moon would gently separate from the sun and teach longing lovers to miss each other across the night. Eternal, beautiful cycles. Everything yet to unfold was already stirring, beginning to move with divine purpose. The gods would laugh heartily and shout passionately, breaking and mending the world in ways only immortals truly can. Chaotic, yet magnificent. Serpents would greedily drink wine and fall to heroic swords. Brave heroes would be cleverly tricked into profound wisdom. Sacred land would be generously offered and eventually yielded. A future grandson would descend the glowing heavenly stairway, plant his foot firmly in rich soil, and summon the fields into structured order. One day written in law, and celebrated in soaring song destiny unfolding. For now, the gentle river flowed peacefully onward, and the god who had finally washed away the clinging stench of the underworld shook out his hair, sending droplets sparkling like stars, and felt truly clean purified body and soul. Yet woven into that hard-won cleanliness was inescapable grief, unerasable ache. Purity, you see, does not wipe away the deep impression left by true love. It doesn't flatten the shared bed where two once lay close or smooth the stone where a loving hand once pressed. Memories etched forever. Izanagi carried the heavy shape of his sorrow like a deep, permanent mark carved into ancient wood visible to all time. That poignant mark would be studied by generations who came after. It would be retold endlessly around fires. It would become the heartfelt reason fathers stand with strong, stoic faces at the family threshold, while mothers solemnly warn children that food taken from the wrong table forges an unbreakable chain caution born of tragedy. The first chapter in any world ours too is always one of necessary separations, isn't it? Heaven separates from earth so each may perfect its own nature, distinct yet interconnected. River separates from sea so tastes vary richly and migrations gain deep meaning. Life separates from death, forcing us to live with the knowledge that the divide is both absolutely true and heartbreakingly thin, always near. The stone ceiling yomi serves as both door and impenetrable wall paradox. The spear that stirred the first island acts as bridge and firm boundary. Gods who understand this tread carefully, reverently. Gods who forget learn through painful bruises, humility hard won. We ordinary mortals listen to their timeless stories and desperately try to glean guiding rules for our brief lives. Don't we all seek that light? All this profound wisdom was woven into the world's very grain when the first island hardened under falling drops from the jeweled spear foundations laid. The palace at Onogoro's center endures in faithful imaginations, its pillar rising like an unfinished, beautiful phrase, eternal, names of the Tiei, Great Eight Islands, are spoken reverently today as cherished beads warmed by years of loving touch sacred. The Firechild's tragic tale is shared around hearths that sometimes forget mercy reminders. The boulder's story is whispered at irreversible goodbyes, farewells lingering. From that riverbank where a grieving father discovered 3 brilliant lights on water, the world leaned eagerly into its next chapter. It leaned towards siblings whose quarrels and reconciliations would weave a net strong enough for a nation. Toward the dragon whose tails would be cut, the sword passing hand to hand like promise. Toward rice-glowing fields and cedar silken shrines, purifying air beauty, everlasting. The first breath was drawn. The second approached. The book opened by spear point, page held by pillar against wind story alive. Grief is a stern teacher with dark lamp. When Izanami slipped behind the stone of endings, Izanagi learned what no creator wants. Even a god can be diminished by losing a companion vulnerability. Islands he coaxed from foam stood green, obedient. Yet Onogoro's air tasted of ash. Servants hushed steps. The naval pillar seemed taller, lonelier. In stillness, Izanagi chose impossible. If love made her queen of shadows, love would cross and beg return romance defying death. He began with signs. In high plain sanctuaries, older gods cast lots, red omens like pale leaves. The lot revealed the passage lay where earth's skin thinned, grew cold divine direction. Izanagi, wrapped in travel robes, took staff knowing every tree's tale. He set out along island edges where cliffs speak stone's clean language, crossed squeaking new sand beaches, followed river mouths where gulls quarrelled brightly. No mortal song marked his path. He needed none. He was a husband on quest. Love was enough pure motivation. Oh, everyone, leaning close, because now we're stepping into the part that makes your heart pound and your skin prickle. The entrance to Yomi doesn't announce itself with some grand creaking gate, no way. It slips up on you like a chill you can't explain, a sudden shift in the breath of the whole world. Can you feel it? The wind that had been rushing in off the sea just stopped like it was holding its breath. The insects forgot their evening songs. Total silence. The ground under Izanagi's feet lost every last trace of warmth, as if the sun had looked away and decided to visit some other story entirely. Goosebumps, right? Then, out of nowhere, a cleft cracked open in a hillside covered in thick, ancient moss, like the earth itself was sighing, and beyond it, a long, sloping corridor that disappeared into the most patient darkness you've ever imagined. Izanagi didn't shout her name. Not yet. He knew better. Names have power down there. And he'd already burned his once on a broken promise. So he steadied his racing heart, squared his shoulders, and went down. Brave or heartbroken? Maybe both. The first bend tasted of iron like blood on the tongue. The second smelled like rain that keeps threatening but never falls aching, empty. The third bend swallowed sound so completely that even his own thoughts seemed to tiptoe in soft shoes. Creepy, isn't it? He met no guardians at the threshold, no snarling dogs, no flaming swords. That stuff comes later. In the oldest version of Yomi, the place simply accepts the bold and lets them prove whether they deserve the regret they're about to earn. Izanagi walked and walked until the weight of the earth above pressed down like a giant hand on his head. Then the passage opened, not into some grand throne hall, oh no, but into a vast country where colour itself had forgotten what it was for. Plains stretched under a light that came from neither sun nor moon, just a cold, sourceless glow. Hills rose that remembered winter but couldn't quite name it anymore. Eerie, heartbreaking, beautiful in the worst way. Only then did he dare call her name. It floated up like a kite that had lost its string, lonely, desperate. And on that pale plain, something moved. A figure. The whole world tilted back toward order for one trembling second. There she was, Izanami standing right in front of him. But she was veiled by the cruel law of the place she'd entered. Her voice came muffled, like it was speaking from behind a curtain of woven reeds. She told him, voice breaking, that she had tasted the food of Yomi. To eat there is to swear an oath you can't break forever. She begged him, actually begged him to wait, while she pleaded with the kings below to release her. "Don't look at me until I have permission," she whispered. "There are reasons the sun itself isn't allowed to see." He swore he would obey. Patience is the highest right in the underworld, and he almost kept it. But the stillness grew heavy as roof tiles, then heavier still, like the whole ceiling of the world was lowering inch by inch. An old fear started crawling up his spine, small and stubborn and impossible to ignore. He turned from the spot where he was supposed to wait, found a little hollow in the wall where a root had dug in, and oh, the weakness of love. He coaxed a spark from flint, fed it shavings from his staff, and lifted the torch. The flame flared. He raised it high, and the light showed him what love almost never wants to know. There stood Izanami, once the sovereign of the first nursery, the mother of islands, now transformed into the terrible mistress of endings. Her proud, beautiful face was burdened by a rule that devours beauty and calls the devouring sacred. Around her crouched 8 thunder spirits, small, vicious, lightning fast each, nested in a ruined hollow of her decaying flesh. Inside her mouth pulsed a darkness that wasn't breath. In her hair, the dead winds had built themselves apartments. Can you even imagine the horror that ripped through him? He screamed a grief so loud it could wake an entire city above ground, loud enough to wake a whole nation of shades below. That cry raced across the colourless plains and down every corridor, and the guardians of Yomi stirred like a nightmare coming alive. The old tales call them the women of Yomi, but they're barely women at all. Just rags of famine given sinew and hunger. Their hair is dry, dead grass. Their eyes are lentils, boiled until they're grey and lifeless. They came trotting on quick, greedy little feet, hunger itself in motion. Izanami cried out too, not in pity, but in pure wrath. A promise broken at the edge of the world is an insult that even the deepest love can't forgive. She commanded the wardens to seize him, and Izanagi ran. At first he fled like the god he was, swift, sure, unstoppable. Then fear cracked his stride, and he ran like any terrified man, heart hammering, breath ragged. The wardens gained closer, closer. In desperation, he reached into his sleeve, yanked free the black headdress that marked his divine rank, and flung it behind him. In a single breath, it exploded into a vineyard heavy with glistening purple clusters. The wardens fell on it like starving beasts, tearing fruit with a fury older than manners itself. He didn't look back. He ran on. When their chewing faded, he ripped the comb from his hair and hurled it down. It burst into thick, tender bamboo shoots, pushing up through the ground as if they'd always belonged there. The wardens stopped again, because even in the land of the dead, new bamboo tastes like spring, like hope, like something worth devouring. He kept running. Hunger is never sated long in Yomi. They came after him again, mouths stained red, making a sound like grave cloths dragging over gravel chilling. He spotted a tree that still remembered the sky, scrambled up it, but the bark crumbled like ash beneath his fingers. He leapt, rolled, staggered to his feet, nearly spent. And there, just ahead, stood a grove of low trees loaded with round, pale treasure peaches. He seized 3 of them and hurled them with a prayer that named them for their impossible sweetness. They split open on the ground, and the scent, oh, the scent, cut through the chasing pack like a blade of pure summer. Even shades recoil from peaches. The perfume is too alive, too bright. The wardens shied back, spitting curses, recoiling as if burned. Izanagi bolted through the gap they left and reached the place where the world narrows into a throat. The passage climbed steeply toward a faint grey light freedom. He scrambled upward and burst out a mouth in the earth wider than any city gate you've ever seen. On this side, the air suddenly remembered birds sweet, living air. On the far side, pressure built like an army climbing his spine. He spun, seized a boulder that felt like it had been waiting centuries just for him. A stone that was also a decree, a law, a full stop, and slammed it into the cleft. The earth itself seemed to help him brace it. The push from below slackened, then stopped completely. From the darkness came a voice that tasted like iron filings scraped across the tongue. Izanami, his Izanami, named him faithless, traitor, promise breaker. She vowed that because of his betrayal, she would drag 1,000 living souls down to her tables every single day. The curse rang out like a death knell. He pressed both palms to the stone and answered, not with hate, but with the stubborn mercy of a creator who refuses to let death win completely. Then I will cause 1,500s to be born each day. Between those two sentences, hers of vengeance, his of defiant life, the daily arithmetic of the world was set forever. 1,000 die, 1,500 are born. Life keeps its slender, stubborn lead. Can you feel the weight of that eternal bargain? He stood there, palms against the rock, and knew the first part of the story had slammed its door forever. No return for her. No reconciliation between hearth and grave. Only balance cold, necessary balance. That stone has carried many names in legend. Some call it the Rock of Evenings. Others call it the weight against which tears break and shatter. Names like that are gentle bandages for a wound that will never fully close. They keep the air off and let the skin slowly knit. He didn't go back to Onogoro, not yet. He still carried the smell of Yomi in his clothes, his hair, his very skin-like smoke that refuses to leave. In the order of the gods, contact with death brings defilement. Purity isn't about being spotless white. It's about readiness. Being a clean vessel, powers that mean well can speak through. So Izanagi made straight for the river at Tachibana in the sun-drenched country of Himuka, a place where clear water runs laughing over stones that remember absolutely nothing perfect for washing away the past. He kicked off his sandals, spirits curled inside the woven reeds, sighed and stretched into being. He loosened his girdle. Another spirit breathed itself free from the unknotted cord. He shrugged off his robe deities of fresh morning breezes, rose from its folds like birds taking flight. Even his walking staff, when it touched the ground again, knew how to turn back into a god everything coming alive. He stepped into the river, and the water jumped a little, like an old friend startled and overjoyed to see him return. He washed his left arm. Kami gathered on the bank like birds coming home to roost, each a guardian of edges and borders. He washed his right arm, the same miracle happened again. Then he cupped the bright water and poured it over his face. He started with the left eye. The water caught the sun and flung it back in a blaze of gold. Out of that brilliance rose a goddess whose bearing could teach kings how to rule. She was Amaterasu, the one who shines in the plane of heaven. Her radiance wasn't harsh. It was the active, life-giving calm of noon itself. She stood with her hair bound by the horizon, lifted her gaze, and the river seemed content to end at her feet. She spoke her name, and the rocks themselves leaned in to listen. He washed his right eye, and a cooler, deliberate light poured out, the kind that tells shepherds when to fold their tents and head home. From that washing rose Tsukuyomi, lord of measured nights, his face a perfect marriage of patience and distance, the god who would number months for fishermen and teach the silver fish of the sky how to keep perfect time. Oh, my friends, can you picture him, Tsukuyomi, the quiet one? He did not smile, not even a little. His presence was pure gentleness, braided tightly with unbreakable law-like moonlight that soothes yet never bends. Isn't that the perfect image of serene authority? At last, with a proud, decisive gesture, Izanagi closed one nostril and blew out the final, stubborn traces of Yomi's air that still clung inside him, expelling the darkness once and for all. And from that powerful breath sprang a god whose very stride covered a length of changing weather itself. He smelled of sharp salt and the metallic bite of coming rain wild and alive. This was Susanoo the Restless, hair wild like a gathering stormfront, spirit fiercely kin to every crashing wave that slaps a rock once, and then slaps it again, relentless. How thrilling, how untamed he must have seemed. He stamped the ground just once. Boom! And the river itself bowed respectfully, ripples spreading in perfect submission. Wow, the power. There they stood on the pebbled shore, the radiant sister and her two fierce brothers, not born from any ordinary bed of love. No, they were born purely from a sacred cleansing, a refusal to remain stained by death's shadow. That, my friends, is the deep logic of their incredible power. Children of defiant purity. Doesn't that give you chills? The river widened peacefully around them, as if making room for destiny. Birds suddenly remembered their songs and filled the air with a pointed noise. Life returning in full chorus. Izanagi gazed at his trio of newborn gods with a deep satisfaction that couldn't erase his sorrow, but somehow made it bearable lighter on his heart. He had lost his beloved wife, irreplaceable ache, yet gained 3 extraordinary children in her place. The arithmetic of loss and gain wasn't cruel this time. It felt almost merciful. Can you sense the bittersweet relief? With the firm, commanding voice of a sovereign who has literally built fields from chaos and knows exactly how to assign realms, he named their destinies. Amaterasu would ascend gloriously to Puilam, Takamagahara, and rule the vast expanse where clouds learn their ever-shifting shapes. Queen of Light, Tsukuyomi, would number the mysterious nights and tend the calm, rhythmic economies of tide and human temper, master of serenity. Susanoo would take fierce charge of wild seas and bruising storms, overseeing all things that test the metal of ships and teach sailors true humility, lord of raw power. The ancient chronicles of that purification rite list, so many more kami born from those sacred washings. A whole bustling court of thresholds and gentle turns. There was a graceful goddess watching over every river crossing, and a diligent god dedicated to removing impurities at a village's very rim. There were humble guardians of drains and watchful protectors of gutters' divine powers that bless even the lowliest boundaries. How beautifully democratic, right? This profound theology of edges is one of the richest, deepest colours in the old faith sacredness. Isn't just in lofty heights. No, it's discovered in the careful, loving tending of seams and borders. When a winding road slips out of a dark forest, there's a watchful God noting that transition. When a fevered child finally passes from sickness back to glowing health, there's a quiet God registering the miracle with an approving nod. Isn't that the most comforting thought? Izanagi stood there in the radiant flood of all these new presences, and knew deep in his ancient bones that the world had been thoroughly cleaned and gloriously reset. He did not forget Yomi's shadow. He did not curse its name either. In the everyday reverent speech of shrines even today, death isn't painted as evil, no. It's heavy, it stains the spirit. It demands careful washings and heartfelt recitations. And then, beautifully, life may resume. What wisdom, What grace in acceptance. Izanagi finally left the riverbank, shaking out his hair one last time, droplets flying like scattered stars, and felt the very last weight of sorrow slide away like a worn shawl finally discarded. Free. He ordered a grateful shrine raised for the humble peach that had once turned back his terrifying pursuers. A sweet token of thanks for the simple sweetness that saves lives in desperate moments. He commanded sacred rites for all the spirits that rise from ordinary clothing and everyday tools, gently teaching even immortals to treat possessions with deep respect, mindfulness in everything. Then, with renewed purpose, he turned his loving attention to the future, which now wore the bright, youthful faces of his three extraordinary gods. Hope, reborn. Amaterasu, ascended upward in glory. Stories whisper that she took with her the sacred mirror, in which the entire world learns to truly recognize itself, profound symbol. And when she sits upon her throne, it's on a seat of pure white that never, ever forgets a single vow unbreakable honor. She brought light that isn't just blinding brightness, but a disciplined, nurturing warmth. Under her benevolent gaze, rice fields remember to be generously abundant, and elegant cranes find the patient grace to stand in perfect, snow-like lines straight out of a poem. Pure beauty. In time, her heavenly court would grow incredibly elaborate, full of splendor, and her quarrels would summon both hilarious comedy and intense crisis in equal measure. But in this tender first moment, she was simply purpose incarnate, focused, radiant destiny. Tsukuyomi. Moved differently, more subtly, more thoughtfully. He doesn't climb dramatically in a blaze of glory. No, he steps deliberately, quietly. He is the precise arithmetic of the sea's shimmering surface and the poetic master of frost's delicate art. In his serene company, fishermen learn which nights speak kindly with safe passage and which whisper warnings. Lovers discover when to trust those romantic messages carved in silvery moonlight, and farmers joyfully learn to sing the names of months like beloved family members. How intimate, how enduring. He is a quieter glory than his brilliant sister. And don't quiet glories tend to last the longest, steady and true. Susanoo. Lingered by the crashing shore, restless even in his moment of victory energy, barely contained. There are spirits born from dramatic cleansing who immediately crave a new challenge, a fresh stain to battle and scour away. He gazed toward wild horizons and saw towering shapes that begged to be wrestled, adventure calling. His fiery temper set the very first hammering of distant thunder to a pounding rhythm that future warbands would remember and march to raw power unleashed. He wasn't wicked, not at heart. He was simply a wild wind, desperately needing harness and a crashing wave, seeking a steady coastline to break against. That harness and coastline would come in time growth ahead. Izanagi, who had boldly started the world with a jeweled spear and set its eternal balances with a massive stone walked away from Tachibana, with all these newly gathered powers marching proudly at his back. He did not return to the ancient pillar at Onogoro. No, the page had definitively turned. In a mythic age, turning a page is monumental work. Rivers and mountains themselves must agree to the shift, and they did, wholeheartedly. The council of the very first gods nodded solemnly like ancient wise trees swaying in approval. Even the staff that had witnessed deep caverns and crushing sorrow humbly allowed itself to become just an ordinary stick again, cycle complete. From this transformative day onward, the shape of the sky finally gained profound meaning purpose everywhere. The sun ruled as a living person full of warmth, not just a distant lamp. The moon counted time as an intelligent mind, not a cold coin. The sea learned its deep griefs and generous gifts from a god who matched it breath for passionate breath, perfect harmony. The daily rites of purification were etched forever in memory, so every humble household could echo the sacred river of Tachibana, keeping the world always ready, always open to receive divine blessing. Beautiful tradition. That terrible yet hopeful arithmetic declared at the border stone took firm hold eternal now. Each day, the somber houses of ending open their doors for exactly 1,000 souls. Yet each day, "1,500 bright doors swung wide in the joyful houses of beginning life prevailing. Numbers don't console the deeply bereaved, we know that, but they do feed the fertile fields and sustain entire peoples. A nation can thrive on that slender surplus of hope, can't it?" Priests would later stand at peaceful river bends and chant the sacred names of all the many kami who had risen from that first, miraculous, washing-honoring origins. They would sweep shrine thresholds with brooms that seemed to know ancient, whispered songs' ritual care. Women would tie purifying cords to branches and pray that household stains be carried gently downstream to unremembered places, cleansing faith. Men would touch foreheads reverently to stones that somehow looked exactly like law feels solid, eternal. Children would learn early to bow before mirrors and even their own reflections, self-respect and humility intertwined. All these enduring customs, don't you love them? Are the gentle ripples spreading from one profound act. A devoted husband dared to fetch his wife from the land that never returns its guests. He failed, heartbreakingly, but set a massive stone where a door should have been. He washed thoroughly. 3 radiant presences rose that would bind the next epic chapters together, destiny unfolding. So the grand stage is now set for the dramatic quarrels and tender reconciliations of light, for those long, cosmic conversations between day and night, and for the dangerous, unpredictable kindness of storms that can destroy or renew. The spear has completed its foundational work. The stone has done its eternal duty. The river has performed its purifying miracle. The rest, the glorious, messy future, belongs to the 3 shining, still damp figures who stood on the bank while their father shook the very last drops from his hair, and, with loving authority, told them exactly where to sit and rule. Legacy begins. In the tender beginning of their rule, these 3 noble children did not yet realize how razor-sharp family love can sometimes become. Innocence before trials. The orders were crystal clear. Amaterasu held the lofty high plane and wore the sacred work of day like a crown upon her brow, radiant responsibility. Tsukuyomi kept the precise silver account of the mysterious night master of cycles. Susanoo strode boldly along the wild borders of sea, an ever-changing weather guardian of chaos and power. That clarity was like a perfect map structured, beautiful. Yet maps, no matter how detailed, do not steal the wildness of hearts, do they? Untamed spirits remain. The sun possessed the serene confidence of rightful place, steady glory. The moon carried the patient wisdom of precise numbers, quiet endurance. But the storm? he bore the deep ache of an unfinished grief. For Susanoo still carried a raw wound named for his lost mother, and it tugged relentlessly at his temper, just as the tide tugs at a storm-tossed boat in a turmoil. Tsukuyomi was the first to lose his careful balance. Surprising, isn't it? Amaterasu appointed him to attend a grand banquet hosted by the generous goddess of food, called Ukemochi in the ancient songs. She longed to honor both the heavenly court and the realm below with a feast, drawing exquisite flavors from every corner of creation. Such abundance. She turned gracefully to the sea and breathed out fish, already perfectly seasoned with salty waves. She faced the rugged mountains and released tender game, dressed in fragrant herbs from upper slopes. She gazed upon golden rice fields and filled steaming bowls with grains perfumed by their own earthy essence. Miraculous. The sacred art of making food was raw, breathtaking miracle in those early days' divine generosity. But Tsukuyomi watched her work and felt only disgust rising, not reverence shocking. He saw the gifts emerging from places that would later be hidden by ordinary kitchens, and condemned her as defiled. Seized by proud, icy revulsion, he slew the very host who had so kindly set the table tragedy at the feast. So ends one of the most disastrous dinners in all of myth. Can you believe it? Amaterasu heard of this horrifying act, and her grief sharpened swiftly into stern judgment, sister's disappointment. She named the deed utterly shameful and forbade Tsukuyomi ever to stand before her again permanent rift. From that heartbreaking decree springs the eternal custom we all know. The sun and moon do not share the same sky. Day and night part company forever like estranged kin, who can only exchange distant messages through the slow turning of seasons' poignant separation. Oh, everyone, can you feel the bittersweet hope in those ancient tales? In some beautiful tellings, the food goddess, Ukemochi, does not remain dead forever. No. From the very places where her fallen body touched the earth, there rose incredible blessings. Lush fields bursting with grain, the miracle of silk from silkworms, golden millet swaying in the breeze, strong oxen ready to plough, and graceful horses galloping free. If that's true, and how moving if it is, it would be yet another heart-stirring instance of the way these old stories masterfully weave deep sorrow into abundant harvest, turning tragedy into life-giving bounty. Isn't that the ultimate redemption? But the dark stain upon Tsukuyomi's name endured stubbornly, didn't it? He withdrew quietly into the realm his sacred office demanded, and became a distant lord of measured distance, cool, untouchable moonlight forever separated. The ache of that rift lingers even now, all this while. Susanoo stormed with unstoppable fury. Oh, the raw emotion. He wept torrents of tears and raged like tempests for the mother who had descended forever among the dead. His grief was a hurricane. He churned the seas into frothing chaos and snapped massive trees, clean by their roots with terrifying strength. He made even the bravest gods of the high plain stuff stones in their sleeves for protection, and nervously watched the stormy sky fear rippling through heaven itself. Can you imagine the turmoil? At last, their father, Izanagi, who had so wisely set the eternal balance of births against deaths and thoroughly washed the clinging underworld from his skin, could bear no more. With grave authority, he told Susanoo to leave heaven immediately. The order fell from a mouth that never issued idle commands, final, unyielding. Susanoo was to depart at once and take up his destined role in the wild lands below exile decreed. Before he went, though defiant to the end, he swore passionately that he would bid proper farewell to his sister and prove his intentions were not poisoned or treacherous. Honor demanded it. Amaterasu is a sovereign who always counts the heavy cost of error wise and cautious. When word came that her unruly, tempestuous brother was climbing boldly toward the high plain, she girded herself for serious trouble, ready for anything. She braided her hair with symbols of unchallengeable authority and armed herself with the gleaming jewels of her divine office. She arranged her entire court with perfect precision and met him with vigilance that gracefully masked her wariness, queenly poise under pressure. Susanoo declared loudly, earnestly, that he had no wish whatsoever to unseat her or overturn the sacred halls, swearing loyalty. She did not trust him, not yet. He asked boldly for a trial that would reveal the absolute truth of his heart-clever idea. Let us each draw children from the regalia of the other, he proposed with intensity, and let the nature of those children be undeniable witness to the purity of our intent. What a peculiar high-stakes contest tension rising. Amaterasu accepted. With solemn ritual precision, she took Susanoo's fierce sword, broke it carefully into gleaming pieces, and washed those shards with sacred words, purifying incantation. From the misty breath that rose over that holy washing emerged 3 exquisite goddesses, whose serene dignity shone like the sharp, perfect line that forever separates day from night, elegant and pure. Susanoo, in turn, seized the string of sacred Magatama jewels that hung upon Amaterasu's breast-curved, glowing treasures, and crushed them dramatically to fine mist with his powerful teeth and spit. From that swirling mist rose 5 bold male gods with proud brows, and the untamed wildness of firstborn sons, fierce vitality. Susanoo claimed victory not once, but twice, boastful joy. First, he declared that the 5 strong boys belonged to him, and their raw strength proved his complete sincerity triumph. Then, Amaterasu calmly argued that because the boys had sprung from her own jewels, they were truly hers, and that the 3 graceful maidens had been born from his sword, and so rightfully belonged to him. When she made this careful accounting logical and fair, he shouted again, "Triumph!" because the 3 maidens were each worth an entire kingdom in beauty and power, and they had issued directly from his property. The debate raged. In truth, neither claim truly mattered to what exploded next, for the heated contest had stoked the wild fire in his blood, and perceived victory made it boil over uncontrollably, danger brewing. He ran recklessly through her carefully tended fields, and deliberately broke the patient banks that held irrigation water, steady chaos unleashed. He tore up perfect furrows with the reckless joy of a boy who's gone far too far destructive glee. He fouled the pristine halls where fine cloth is meticulously stretched and beaten into shimmering sheen, as if he simply could not bear the calm thought of order maintained by steady rhythm rebellion against peace. Last of all, and worst of all, the ultimate outrage. He brought a heavenly pony, brutally flayed it, and hurled the bloody carcass straight through the roof of the sacred place, where the women of the sun goddess were peacefully weaving. The holy craft was shattered in an instant, and an innocent maiden died tragically, with her shuttle still clutched in her hand, horror beyond words. The act was pure desecration, unforgivable. It was a deep wound to heaven's household, and a savage blow to the sacred art by which garments are lovingly made for kings and even gods. Even those who had once loved the storm, God turned away in shock and sorrow betrayal. There comes a moment when even a patient queen refuses to be struck again. Enough is enough. Amaterasu left the court in dignified silence. She slipped away from the unbearable outrage and walked resolutely to a remote mountain gorge, where a dark cave opened like a yawning mouth, retreat calling. She entered that hollow sanctuary and pulled a massive stone door firmly against the world, sitting alone within its black, echoing throat, withdrawing her light. She did not sulk childishly. No! She removed herself completely from a creation that had forgotten how to truly deserve her radiant light withdrawal as protest. The withdrawal of a sun goddess is no mere metaphor in the language of gods. It's literal catastrophe. Day ended abruptly. Crops bent weakly and failed across the land. Wolves grew bold with courage. Creatures that naturally hide by day learned new boldness and crept to stare defiantly at the very doors of houses darkness reigning. The heavens lost their essential lamp, and thick despair settled over everything like a second, heavier night world in crisis. The gatherings of gods that followed. Oh, they're among the most beloved, heartwarming councils in any mythology. They came rushing from distant corners mighty powers, who usually keep strictly to their own provinces, and crowded anxiously along the riverbanks below the cave's ominous mouth unity. In emergency, there were tireless smiths whose anvils never cool masters of creation. Jewelers whose skilled hands literally hum with energy when they touch precious stone artisans of beauty. Singers and dancers whose feet remember the world's rhythms from before it even existed, primal joy. The gravity of this disaster sparked a rare communal wit-clever hope. They talked animatedly until their collective breaths created a small, hopeful wind, and decided that laughter, yes, laughter, might accomplish what anger and pleading had utterly failed to do. Brilliant plan. The daring plan required 3 perfect gifts and 1 fearless performance excitement building. First, they commissioned the master smiths to forge a mirror broader than the bellies of massive drums. A flawless disc so perfectly polished it could hold an entire sky without a single ripple. Ishikoridome, sometimes named as the deity of stone shaping, crafted it with divine skill masterpiece complete. Second, they called upon the renowned jewel maker, Tamanuya, in the old sacred recitations, to string together a magnificent length of curved jewels, glowing as green as wet pine needles and as red as silk caught in firelight. These would hang dazzlingly to delight the eye of a goddess who has never been immune to the gentle kindness of true beauty, irresistible lure. Third, they gathered proud roosters with their bright combs and set them to crow without ceasing, filling the air with the defiant sound of morning even at the very mouth of endless night heralds of dawn. Then they cleared a wide space and cleverly turned over a large tub to create an impromptu stage resourceful. Onto it climbed Ami no Uzumi, goddess of dawn, dance, and unashamed, joyous, laughter-fearless star. She was small yet incredibly strong, with a voice that could ring boldly against a mountain itself. Powerful presence. She stamped upon the tub until the wood barked joyfully like an excited seal rhythm igniting. She told outrageous jokes with the bold frankness of a wild festival, laughter erupting. She loosened her clothes in playful hints and wheeled her hips with the ancient, primal language that remembers exactly where life begins. Sensual, celebratory energy. The other gods whooped wildly, clapped thunderously, and called out encouragement as if a bountiful harvest were being joyfully measured into overflowing baskets. Pure revelry. The entire valley filled with a sound so incredibly bright, so alive, that even distant grief sat up and listened in wonder magic unfolding. Deep inside the cave, Amaterasu felt the powerful vibration of that unexpected joy and frowned in confusion. She had withdrawn from a world that had lost seriousness. Why then were they celebrating wildly at the very door of eternal night? Curiosity stirred. She called out sternly and demanded to know what cause of delight could possibly exist while fields withered below and courts sat shrouded in darkness. Queenly challenge. Outside, bold, Ame no Uzume declared triumphantly that they had discovered a goddess far more splendid than the sun herself. A dazzling new light, whose face shone with freshness that mocked all previous day-clever ruse. Pride and burning curiosity touched a hidden place in Amaterasu that no amount of sorrow can ever permanently seal vulnerability revealed. She pushed the heavy stone door just a little way open and cautiously peered out. Hope flickering. They had hung the long, magnificent string of jewels on a sacred tree, dressed beautifully with white cloth and fresh green leaves, irresistible sparkle. They had positioned the great mirror at a perfect, cunning angle trap set. When Amaterasu leaned forward toward the joyous noise and bold claims, she saw a radiant, breathtaking figure shining brilliantly at the cave mouth, herself reflected. She did not recognize it at first. Gods, just like us, are vulnerable to the shocking power of their own reflection, timeless moment. She stepped closer, drawn irresistibly, and the beautiful face in the mirror brightened further and seemed to draw near mesmerizing. At that exact, perfect instant, a massively strong deity named Afrairi leaped forward with lightning speed, seized her wrist gently but firmly, and drew her fully out into the open rescue complete. Others swung the stone door shut with finality and dragged a heavy, sacred rope across it. A shimenawa knotted in such a powerful way that even a goddess hesitates to cross-seal restored. The glorious light rolled joyously over the valley like fresh milk poured generously, world reborn. The gods rejoiced wildly, and at long last, their triumphant crowing perfectly fit the restored world, again dawn victorious. Oh, everyone, can you feel the overwhelming wave of relief that rushed through every single rank of being when the light finally returned? It was electric pure joy, exploding everywhere. Rice plants lifted their tender young blades toward the sky again, as if stretching after a long nightmare. Carp in the ponds turned lazily on their sides, flashing brilliant gold in gratitude. Even the ancient stones seemed to smile in their slow, eternal way, nature itself celebrating. How beautiful, how healing that moment must have been. Priests in later centuries that still honor this miracle would faithfully reenact the raucous, life-affirming dance of Uzum in solemn theaters and bustling village squares alike. For it is absolutely right, isn't it, to laugh wholeheartedly at the memory of disaster overcome by clever wit and unbridled joy. Laughter as salvation, brilliant. As for poor, tempestuous Susanoo, the heavenly court exacted severe penalties. Justice served cold. His wild hair was cut short in humiliation. His nails were painfully torn out, mark of disgrace. He was thrust forcefully from heaven at long last and banished to the earthly country of Izumo. By a divine law that could no longer be negotiated or softened, exile final and irreversible, he descended like a mighty storm that has spent its fury battering mountains and now races toward open lands in search of a fresh argument, unspent energy seeking new purpose. Dramatic, isn't it? It is absolutely worth pausing here, taking a deep breath to linger over the profound symbols gathered at that cave mouth timeless treasures. The mirror would become one of the sacred imperial treasures by which a true sovereign is forever recognized. It stands as an eternal reminder that good rule must be reflective rather than blind, that it requires a leader willing to see their own face clearly and accept necessary correction. Self-awareness as power profound. The long string of curved jewels remembers the very first economics of worship, the sacred exchange, and the irresistible sweetness by which the heart is gently steered toward devoted attention. Beauty as devotion. The thick rope, pulled firmly across the cave mouth, is the direct ancestor of every sacred boundary rope, Shimenawa, drawn at shrines today. It reminds us all that there are holy thresholds which should only be crossed in the right, reverent state of mind. Respect for the sacred. The joyous dance of Uzume endures vibrantly wherever ceremony truly understands that the sacred is not only severe and solemn. No, joy itself is a powerful ritual, every bit as binding as grief. Celebration and sorrow, both essential. The quarrel between these divine siblings did not end neatly with the cave's opening. Oh no, it found dramatic new chapters, fresh wounds to heal, and beautiful restorations ahead. Yet this pivotal episode decisively shaped the great rhythm by which we mortals still live. Today, day and night, light and shadow. Light can be lost and miraculously found again. It can hide in sorrow and be fetched back with clever laughter and gentle tact. The sun herself can be caught by a simple mirror, courted with sparkling jewels, and joyfully invited by songs that make even the most sober souls shake their shoulders in delight. Hope restored through play. In the oldest glowing embers of this story, a desperate community solved a divine crisis, not with sharp spears or harsh scoldings, but with pure theatre imagination. Triumphant. That brilliant choice reveals exactly what kind of wise, resilient people. These gods shaped creative, joyful, unbreakable, inspiring, right. Tsukuyomi took his quiet place in the vast night sky and kept carefully to his distance, isolated by choice and consequence. He was not invited to the triumphant dance. And honestly, he wouldn't have come even if he had been pride lingering. He learned the art of turning his face away, hiding in shadow, and returning again, teaching human bodies when to harvest crops under moonlight, when to wait patiently, when to fish in calm waters, and when to simply sleep. Cycles of forgiveness. He slowly learned to loosen his iron hold on that ancient insult and let the cool night do the rest healing in distance. The old insult remained, a faint scar, yet under his precise, cool arithmetic, the world discovered a kinder, more measured pace balance from regret. Amaterasu. returned triumphantly to the Morn high plain. With a profound new companion the world had never known before. It was not a lover or even a guard, no. It was the hard-won knowledge that even the brightest, most essential light must sometimes be earnestly invited, back humility learned. The sacred mirror in her palace would catch her eye on quiet afternoons and gently show her a face not unlike the one reflected at the cave mouth, except perhaps a little wiser, softened by experience, growth through trial. The heavenly court resumed its sacred rituals with renewed vigour. Fine cloth was woven once more in the halls that had been purified and made clean, and the songs of the loom rang out sweet, like gentle rain in spring harmony restored. Offerings were gratefully made to the goddess of food in her many new, bountiful forms, for even from her slain body, the generous gifts of agriculture had continued to arrive. Rice, silk, livestock. The tragic era of Tsukuyomi did not stop the earth from remaining endlessly generous, life persisting. Susanoo dropped earthward toward Izumo. Still ignorant of the terrifying monster and brave maiden who would soon dramatically alter his wild story and temper his fury redemption approaching. His exile was not truly a defeat so much as the turning of a crucial page new chapter, beginning. The seas called to him with the familiar voices he had always heard echoing in his skull and teeth. Homecoming of sorts. He brought with him an explosive energy that is not inherently evil, but desperately calls for contest and wise, prudent limits. Power-seeking purpose. He would soon find those essential limits in a peaceful valley where a river runs sharp and gleaming like a wet sword, and in a humble house where an old couple weep inconsolably for their last remaining child tragedy waiting. But that heart-pounding part comes next. Hold on. For now, let's remember forever the cave and the explosive laughter and that magical moment when a powerful goddess momentarily forgot her own face and reached out to touch its reflection vulnerability shared. Remember the master smith who forged a sun out of polished stone, the inspired jeweler who strung a flowing river into a rope of jewels, and the fearless dancers who pulled glorious light back into the world with the earnest, playful mischief of pure joy, triumph of wit. Remember also the profound lesson tucked gently inside this divine scandal, that any court heavenly or earthly must make room for both dignified seriousness and playful joy, or else even the sun herself will grow weary and retreat to sit alone in the dark balance essential. These are not simple morals preached from on high. They are vital bearings, compass points, by which an entire people learn to steer their lives through storm and calm alike. Wisdom enduring. Exile does not silence or quiet a restless wind. No, it merely redirects it toward new horizons transformation possible. When the stern court of the Anhai Plain finally cut the nails of Susanoo and trimmed the wild fury from his hair-symbolic taming and sent him hurtling down to earth, the sea claimed him instantly, possessively. He fell toward the green, mortal provinces like a sudden squall, with quick, fierce intent and the sharp scent of salt cloaking him like armor. The decree that banished him did not erase or remove his stormy nature, not at all. It simply gave the patient earth a precious chance to tutor and channel its growth through consequence. The crashing waves along the coast of Izumo received him with the booming, joyous welcome that ancient stones reserve for powerful breakers. Home at last, and the god of storm and sea stepped boldly ashore into a land of swaying reeds, broad and winding rivers, and jagged mountain teeth, perfect for his spirit. Izumo is a mystical place where waters gather thoughtfully before hurrying out to sea, ebb and flow. The heavens loom intimately close there, and soft mists are never shy, atmospheric, welcoming. It suited him perfectly, wild soul finding wild land. He walked confidently inland along a rushing river that ran white and foamy at its edges and deep brown in its belly, beautiful contrast, and followed its course until he heard human voices, thick, heavy with sorrow, heart-tugging. The mournful sound came from a simple, lean house pressed close against a bank that had clearly seen devastating floods before. There, an old man and an old woman were desperately trying to persuade their trembling hands not to shake grief manifesting physically. Between them sat a young girl whose serene face wore the quiet calm of those who have watched hope slip away household by household and have learned not to name it aloud anymore. Resigned courage break in your heart. Susanoo, moved by their pain, asked gently for the cause of their tears, compassion stirring in the storm god. The old man looked up through tears and saw a towering figure whose eyes held swirling broken weather and sudden bursts of sunlight hope arriving. He bowed low until his forehead touched the floor in respect and revealed that his name was Ashinazuchi, and his wife's was Tenazuchi. Footstroker and handstroker, and their precious daughter was named Kushinadaheim, Ricefield Princess. Once they had 8 beautiful daughters, full house of joy. But each year, a monstrous beast descended mercilessly from the mountain range and claimed one as sacrifice, and that horrific debt had been paid 7 heartbreaking times. This very night would come when the beast would demand the last final despair. There was no high cliff from which to throw themselves that promised sure defense escape impossible. There was no shrine powerful enough to hide even a single terrified heartbeat sanctuary, denied. So they wept openly and waited for a door that had no hinges, death inevitable. Susanoo asked the name of the valley and learned it lay in the ancient land called Koshi. A name breathing echoes of older forgotten maps. He inquired about their lineage and discovered they traced their blood proudly back to the family of the food goddess, who had once been so wrongly slain by the moon destiny connecting. Through such profound ties, destiny sets both its cunning snares, and its miraculous rescues fate weaving. He told the parents his divine name with authority and declared boldly that if they would give the girl to him as bride promise of protection, he would cut this looming calamity clean out of their story, hero emerging. The old man swore passionately by every god who listens that he would bind the marriage with deepest gratitude as well as sacred law vow sealed. The storm god nodded once decisively, and at that single nod, the sagging rafters of their home seemed to remember how to stand straight and strong again, hope restoring structure. Kushinadaheim was the soft, delicate colour of rice flowers gently swaying when wind moves through them, ethereal beauty. Of such quiet, resilient women, bards throughout time are always careful to speak simply and reverently timeless grace. Susanoo knew instinctively that a true hero who dares lift his sword against a monster must first place his beloved safely beyond that sword's wide, dangerous swing protection. First, he touched her hair tenderly and transformed her into a fine-toothed comb, setting that precious comb securely into his own wild hair by his ear. so her gentle voice might whisper wise counsel, and her loving nearness keep his raging heart steady amid the coming storm romance and strategy intertwined. Oh, my dear listeners, can you even imagine the electric tension as Susanoo stepped outside that humble house, heart pounding with purpose? He looked upriver toward the shadowy mountain pass and felt it. The overwhelming, great animal presence turning its many sinister heads slowly toward the peaceful valley. The threat was closing in, chills racing down your spine, right? The monster was called Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed serpent of nightmares. Old tellers, voices trembling with awe, say it possessed 8 terrifying heads and 8 writhing tails, and a body so impossibly vast that it sprawled menacingly over 8 hills and 8 deep valleys, as if an entire mountain range had awakened and tried to learn how to twist and writhe in pure fury. How horrifyingly immense, how utterly overwhelming. Its eyes glowed like the deep, dangerous red of wine that has stared too long at a blazing brazier, hypnotic and deadly. On its massive back, ancient fir trees actually grew tall and undisturbed, as if it had been an unmoving ridge since the very dawn of stone's perfect camouflage for chaos. Its belly ran with festering sores through which it drooled thick, corrosive poison of old, rusted metals, venomous horror. The river itself foamed wildly and unnaturally at its bowels whenever it drew a rumbling breath, pure, primal terror. This was no tidy, elegant dragon from children's tales. No, it was a raw, living memory of primordial chaos come crashing down in gleaming, venomous scales, nightmare incarnate. But Susanoo did not charge recklessly wise and matured. He had learned the hard way in heaven that his explosive temper makes grave mistakes when he rushes blindly. Growth from painful lessons. He asked calmly for a cask, and then another and another, until he had 8 great tubs lined up, and ready strategic brilliance unfolding. He had the old man brew a rice wine so intoxicatingly strong that its heady smell pulled irresistibly at the roots of the tongue temptation crafted. He and the anxious parents worked together to build a sturdy fence of thick, stout posts, and in that fence they carefully made 8 precise gates, symmetry as armor. Behind each gate they positioned 1 vat of that fierce, potent drink. They sealed the entire structure as meticulously as a devoted priest seals a sacred letter preparation sealed with care. Then the storm god stood back confidently, hand resting lightly on the hilt of a sword that seemed to sense it was about to learn a far better, nobler song destiny vibrating. Even the most fearsome monsters have predictable habits. Don't they always? As the appointed evening sank, its chilly, ominous finger along the darkening river dread, building like thunder. Orochi came slithering down from the pass with slow, inevitable motion, like the grinding, unstoppable fall of a massive landslide terror approaching. Each monstrous head sniffed and tasted the air curiously and caught the irresistible sweet of the wine hooked completely. They pushed forward greedily toward a gate. The fence held firm, unyielding. The heads bent low. They drank deeply, gluttony taking over. The sake was like an endless, tempting lake to them, and they plunged their long throats in until the tubs stood completely empty, their guard down. Their tongues hung out foolishly long, and the tips of their tails twitched with the silly, helpless joy of hopeless drunks. Their heavy eyelids dragged closed one by one, vulnerable at last, A living mountain fell into deep, drunken, sleep-perfect opportunity. Susanoo moved then swift yet controlled. He did not roar triumphantly or boast. No, he stepped through the fence with the serene calm of a man who has lit the last lamp in a quiet temple and is carefully checking the locks. Precision and focus over rage. He brought his gleaming blade down on a neck and then on another clean, efficient work without wasteful flourish, and the severed heads rolled away heavily like hailstones that stubbornly cannot melt. Justice delivered. He waded forward, undaunted, through rivers of blood that ran black in the night shadows and silver under the cold moon-eerie beauty, and at each powerful stroke, the raw strength of the storm found a far better, more heroic use than blind anger redemption in every swing. He hacked the enormous body into separate sections so that it could never miraculously knit itself together and sigh back to menacing life. Finality ensured. The earth shuddered violently under the impact. The river boiled with the hot, chaotic disorder that always follows a hard-won justice well done. World realigning. When he reached the great coiling tail final challenge, he struck hard and felt a sudden jar that told him metal had kissed metal. Something extraordinary hidden. He frowned in curiosity and cut again, deeper, and discovered within the tail a blade of such exquisite fineness that even the mighty god himself caught his breath in pure wonder treasure unveiled. It was not forged in any earthly forge he knew of. It carried the ethereal memory of gathering clouds and of the clear, focused mind that disperses them, perfect harmony of power and peace. They named it Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, the heavenly sword of gathering clouds, majestic and fitting. It would later be called Kusanagi, the grass cutter, for a legendary deed yet to unfold, but that epic song belonged to another age future awaiting. Susanoo lifted the sword reverently and understood deeply, profoundly, that sometimes a beast dies not only to end a terrible hunger, but to release a hidden, precious gift, purpose emerging from destruction. He washed the blade carefully in the river and held it up to the starry night, gleaming with promise. Then, because even the proudest hearts know when to offer sincere reparation, he sent the sword upward to my Amaterasu in the fray. High plain. Take this, the humble message said. Let it be a heartfelt token that your brother has learned at least one way to do the work of order. Reconciliation offered beautiful growth. In later centuries, people would reverently declare that this very blade, along with the sacred mirror and a curved jewel, were the three imperial objects by which a true sovereign is forever known, and legitimized regal symbols, enduring. In this raw, first moment though, it was simply a breathtaking weapon, rescued from a monstrous carcass and offered upward with a respectful bow humility shining through. With the serpent utterly destroyed, evil vanquished forever, Susanoo returned to the house by the river and gently took the fine-toothed comb from his hair magic reversed. Kushinada Haim stood in the chamber radiant and safe, like a vow faithfully kept, love preserved. He married her with tender, heartfelt words that remembered and honoured that true tenderness is also profound strength. Love's quiet power, and they built a peaceful, loving home at Shuka in Izumo, where the air is as pure and clear as water found at the base of an ancient cedar serene paradise. There, The storm god is said to have spoken the very first poem in the language, a gentle, moving verse that compares the careful making of a house to the loving, gentle encircling of a bride. A verse that builds slowly to a resting place that is almost a deep, contented sigh of release poetry from the heart. Poetry and the sword often keep close, companionable company in the biographies of gods and of men-art and valor intertwined forever. Susanoo did not become a completely tame or mild spirit. Never. He remained changeable and unpredictable, as light dancing on a restless wave true to his nature. Yet the valley learned gratefully that his powerful path could be aligned with the safety of fertile fields. Protector emerged. He taught people practically how to cut proper channels that let dangerous floods run where floods should safely run. Practical wisdom. He reminded them to tie their roofs securely to their frames. Preparation against storms. He stood firmly between raging sea and threatening house fire, and called each force by its proper name, mastery earned. He had once torn up protective dikes in a fit of careless, destructive victory. Heaven's chaos remembered. Now he patiently told eager boys to put their feet against the base of a wall and test it carefully, the way a seasoned sailor tests a rope with his hands and his ear lessons from experience. He had married into a noble lineage that cherished shrines as much as warm hearts balance of sacred and home. Kushinada Heim brought a gentle reverence to the house that softened and mellowed the sharp corners of his fiery temper love's calming influence. From time to time, he would wander down to the shore and stand silently with a tide's rhythm in his eyes, reflective moments, and then return home carrying fresh fish whose scales shimmered like small coins of warm sunrise provider and poet. The old couple lived out their remaining years in peace with a grandchild on each knee joy restored, and with the deep, settled sense that the mountain pass above the river no longer contained a hungry mouth that opened menacingly into their kitchen safety, eternal. In this powerful, inspiring chapter, it is absolutely worth lingering over the brilliant craft that saved the girl in the Valley Genius strategy shining. The old sacred texts insist on the protective number 8, as if the rhythm of that number itself were a powerful charm spoken aloud. 8 heads, 8 tails, 8 gates, 8 vats. Perfect symmetry, warding evil. The tale carries the enchanting taste of a protective charm whispered in the dark magic woven. There are profound echoes here of the way wise communities build layered, thoughtful defenses against threats. A single gate can be broken vulnerable alone. 8 gates together share the heavy load of danger strength in unity. A monster might resist a single cup of tempting wine-lingering willpower, but 8 vats teach it to forget its ravenous hunger in an overwhelming flood of intoxicating sweetness, overcoming through abundance. Susanoo did not fight raw nature with brute contest alone. No blind rage here. He cleverly fed one appetite to lull another into vulnerability, and then brought the sword decisively to a neck that no longer danced or dodged intelligence triumphant over force. The story honours cunning preparation every bit as much as raw strength-balanced heroism at its finest. There is also the profound matter of the hidden sword destiny's brilliant surprise. Weapons concealed inside monsters appear in so many world traditions. Like hearts hidden in boxes or true names, sealed in Egg's universal motif of hope.